Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for being here today for our event, a Global People's Assembly event reflecting on 10 years of the Sustainable Development Goals. So we have a very jam-packed agenda for you today and a lot of speakers and hopefully some space for discussion from all of you as well. So it's really great to see all of you in the room. And while we are letting everybody in, we're just going to play a video recapping our last People's Assembly that we had in person. So here we go.
Okay. So I said, sorry, George.
In front of the
What?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, let's go ahead.
UN building. You could say in front or behind. I would want to believe that we are in front of the UN building.
We are at the Global People's Assembly happening in New York City.
It's an initiative from the CSOs led by GCAP.
It's about bringing people's voices together from all over the world.
This building says United Nations, but today we showed you the people from many different nations united themselves.
If we're talking about inclusivity for real, and we really mean what we say, then let's listen to each other.
We have to send a message from all the people that now is the time.
A lot of people from all parts of the world have come. They want to see change.
Bringing the voices of the masses to this global platform. That is what we are doing here today.
Communities across the world.
There's so many people here today and they're talking about different issues.
Who are the people who are left behind, and how do we ensure that their voices are heard?
We are meeting here as civil society. We have organized meetings around the world in 40 countries.
The Global People's Assembly is about hearing those voices, hearing those experiences, and trying to cultivate and curate a movement that's driven by people, for people from across the world.
Civil society groups, citizens group need to reclaim their agency.
They want to be heard. So it starts by us. I was born in Soweto. I'm sure you guys, you've heard of Soweto. You've heard of Nelson Mandela.
This event is so important because we are collecting the voices of the people. We are organizing, mobilizing, and amplifying the voices of women and girls living in slum communities across Kenya. We want to be part and parcel of development processes. The people will present to you the real situation on the ground. So without listening to the people, we are solving no problem.
Many people fear that the future that they are able to create for their children is worse than the situation they have themselves. And I think that is actually the first time in history that that is happening.
If you hear what's going on, there are sirens everywhere.
I think the world is coming closer to an abyss, much closer than I've ever thought.
People continue to remain poor, they live in indignity.
A lot of human rights defenders in my country have been killed, especially those that are working on environmental justice.
An activist said the other day, we are halfway there, but nowhere near.
Okay, thank you everybody who's still joining the room. As I said at the start, we were just having a little look there at a recap on the previous Global People's Assemblies. This is a Global People's Assembly event that is looking at 10 years since the Sustainable Development Goals and mapping where we're going forward. So thank you all for being in the room with us today. We have a lot of great speakers from a lot of different constituencies, and I'm just briefly going to go over some of the housekeeping rules before we begin with the event. So we just had this short video here that was recapping the People's Assembly. I just want to quickly say that we have interpretation between English, French and Spanish. Please click the globe icon to choose your channel. It's at the bottom, and if you want English, please also go into the English channel, so don't stay just in the main room. And now I will kindly ask our French interpreter to explain that again in French. Thank you.
Bonjour à tous, bienvenue à l'Assemblée populaire mondiale organisée en l'honneur des 10 ans des ODD. N'oubliez pas de vous connecter à l'interprétation pour les francophones. Il vous suffit de cliquer sur les 3 petits points, le bouton plus, choisir interprétation et la langue française. À tout de suite en cabine.
Thank you so much, Carla. And then I would like to ask Hector if you could explain that in Spanish for us, please.
Hola, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches a todos. Les recordamos que tienen la interpretación disponible, solamente tienen que ir a la parte de abajo y elegir el icono donde aparece el mundito, elegir español.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we have some solidarity principles here that I'm just going to briefly share. The first of these is be present. So do not multitask, value the space set up, and practice active listening. The second is engage fully. So you're here because you want to be here and you have valuable things to add. The third is make space and take space. So we'll take a step to side if you're talking more than others. The fourth is expect the best of people. If something is unclear, ask people what they mean. And the fifth is attack the issue. So tackle the main problem and not the individual. And the final is no discrimination. So we have a zero discrimination policy in this call today, and if anyone is engaging in discriminatory behavior, they will be removed. We also have this hashtag People's Assembly that we would like you all to share on social media, be it your personal accounts, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Instagram, with your organizations that you're representing. It would be great if we could start using this and sharing this event. And now I'm going to pass over to Paul, who I think is going to explain the program.
Hi, Jai Bhim, Oproroma, Uhuru, Lentai, Salve. These are the several slogans and from all continents, especially those from most marginalized, discriminated communities. Greetings again and welcome to this Global People's Assembly event. We're very careful to say this is an event. We would have loved to have a great assembly, which we normally would try to do, but a lot of shrinking issues, and therefore I'm really glad that we are all able to be here. And welcome once again. We have a very interesting program, but as usual, we have only seconds and minutes to count because such a tight program, and we cannot have a 2-day program. So it's really very tightly organized. Initially, there is one section that we are going to have, which is a kind of a setting the scene. And we have very, very powerful personalities and speakers who are with us, Kumi Naidoo, Flora, Mandeep, and John. John will make a quick announcement of an event that is following. Then after that, we have a second dialogue, a section which primarily focuses on the theme, which is 10 years since the SDGs. In fact, I think we're almost over because next year or in 27, we'll already be planning for the post-2030 dialogue. But so this is a very critical time looking at what have been the learnings, what are the aspects that are missing. And so here we have mostly various constituency representatives who are here. Again, from a score, but here I would like to make a special mention that only some of the constituencies we've managed to have. Many others, like the whole group of persons with disability, indigenous, the whole indigenous constituency, LGBT, and several others, we've not managed to have their input into this. So if there are people, we will call out, and if we miss you, please indicate to us, and we will find you and have a few minutes for you also to have a say. Then we have a short video, but after that we'll go into the final section, which is the third dialogue, looking into ahead. What do we do ahead after 2025? Very concerning events are taking place, not only globally, but which are dismantling or trying to dismantle the multilateralism, which we are all here trying to engage. And that's a very critical aspect. How do we keep this up? How do we keep the movements space going, but also movement space within the framework of multilateralism? So how do we do this? So we have also a very powerful set of panelists and speakers who will be speaking to us. So having said this about the speakers, one thing we've decided not to do is give the bios of the speakers, because that itself will consume almost half the time. If you have to share the details of Kumi Naidoo, for example, it'll eat up most of his time. So one of the things that I'm like to a little, I do not know how to put it, because these are all very powerful speakers. Like Trump was given only 15 minutes, but he took 1 hour and more than 1 hour. So I'm hoping all of you will take this example. If it says 8 minutes, please try to speak only for 7 minutes, because you know how these minutes just get elongated, and soon we will find we are almost at the end and many speakers are still there. And it's not only some of us who are here as speakers, but there are many important people who have signed up and who are here, whom I can notice, and they too might like to have a say. So please be as brief and as script as possible, so that you can say a lot more in a short time, and allow others. So also some of those who would like to join in from the floor, there is time, but very short time. So we don't want another huge speech, but very crisp interventions will be very helpful. So with this, one last thing, we must, of course, have a photo op. So maybe after the first section, I would request all of us to have our videos on. Otherwise, we are encouraging only those who are speaking, and some of the panelists who are going to speak have their videos on, and the rest of us, of course, we all like our videos and we all would like to see you. But if it is okay, if you can switch your audio and video off, that will be helpful. But at the photo op time, which will be at the end of this first dialogue, before we open the floor, I request all of us, whatever form you are, in whatever place you are, don't be shy, open your video, and we'd like to have a quick grasp of the video, and then we will continue. So I request Ingo and Rose to remind that at the end of the first 3 speakers, we will, after John speaks, we'll go ahead and request everyone to open. I think you have to allow people to open their videos. And finally, we know that even yesterday, I heard, or the day before yesterday, there were all these, whatever you call these bombs that come into the to the webinars, trying to spoil our mood and spoil our discussions. Please beware that if any one such thing, we request all of you to alert us, and so that we can drive them out and not allow them to disturb the flow of this very important assembly event. So with this, just a few words to save on time. One, only 80% of the goals are anywhere near the target that we have set. And this is really frustrating. And this we are keeping repeating again and again. And almost we are towards the end, as I've said. No accountability. Still, the whole gap between the North and South, and the way that the South is still treated, even in these areas, is very, very disconcerting. And also, there is a way that we'll have to deal with these issues. Some of the critical aspects, especially regarding environment, climate justice, are aspects which are still huge. And me coming from a Dalit identity, which is marginalized, we are still struggling. But really, thanks to the whole civil society mechanism, some of the visibilization of the leave no one behind communities who have been traditionally, and routinely excluded, are gaining visibility. But however, that's not enough. We need, I think, something more enough to see that we address these concerns. And lastly, however much we speak about it, we cannot but once again remind ourselves how miserably we failed, especially in the whole area of the violence that has been unleashed in aspects like Gaza. But it's not only Gaza, it's several aspects that we have come across. Some of these gory sorts of violence, areas of conflicts, the whole conflict corridors and zones across the world, not just in Ukraine, but also in Western Sahel, Sudan, and of course, on the recent thing that have happened, of course, in a different pattern in Nepal, which is being corrected. But we'd like to request all of us have a moment of silence for all those lives which have been lost and are continuing to have the gory of violence. So a moment of silence to see that we seek strength for those who are left behind, and in solidarity with all those. Yeah, thank you very much for all these. I'm very happy to welcome and request Kumi Naidoo to give us the keynote address. He does not need any introduction, as I've said, but he's now currently, of course, he has so many hats. I think all of us have been following. But the latest one is he's the president of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty Initiative. I know it's a very important aspect, especially in the whole environment and the ecological issues that we are fighting. So over to you, Kumi. Kumi, you have 10 minutes, but I will say that if you can contain it within 9 minutes, I'll be really thankful. I know, like Trump, we will not be able to close your mic, but give us some, give us some space to hold you down if you exceed.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you for starting us off with taking our hearts to the genocide in Gaza and the other atrocities that are happening in real time around us. And greetings to everyone joining this People's Assembly. Today we mark 10 years since the launch of the SDGs, a promise made by governments to people everywhere. It is a bittersweet anniversary, a moment to reflect honestly, but also to re-energize our struggle for justice. The SDGs were hailed by many, not all, as a universal agenda to end poverty, tackle inequality, and protect the planet. But 10 years on, the evidence is sobering. We are not on track to meet a single of the 17 goals substantively. Poverty is rising again in many parts of the world. Inequalities within and between countries have widened. Wars rage on multiple continents with millions of people being displaced. And the climate crisis is intensifying, driving floods, droughts, fires, and famine. We must be honest, therefore. The SDGs as a framework have not yet succeeded in shifting the balance of power or wealth in the world. So why have the SDGs failed? First, the voluntary nature of the goals meant governments could celebrate themselves without accountability. Targets were treated like optional aspirations, not binding commitments. Second, the SDGs were launched without confronting structural injustices. A global economy that is built on extraction and exploitation. A financial system that rewards speculation more than human dignity. And a political order dominated in far too many countries today by elites and authoritarian regimes. Third, we must admit that powerful governments, especially the United States, have undermined multilateralism. Today, we even see the SDGs attacked and dismissed as irrelevant. And finally, the corporate capture of the agenda, where fossil fuel companies, mining giants, and agribusiness parade their SDG badges while destroying communities has hollowed out the legitimacy of the SDGs. So what do we do now? Some will say, let's abandon the SDGs. Others argue, let's double down. My view is this. The SDGs should not be fetished as the ultimate solution. They are a tool, not a sacred text. And in fact, if we look at the SDGs as a package, there are contradictions within them. The goal on climate versus the goal on growth are actually contradictory. We need to talk about these contradictions. What matters is how communities, social movements, and ordinary people use them as leverage to hold governments and corporations accountable. We cannot allow the SDGs to be quietly buried. That would be another betrayal of the promises made to the poor, to indigenous peoples, to women, and to young people. Instead, I think what is critically needed now is we need to repurpose the SDGs as a rallying point for people's power. To say, you promised us dignity, equality, and a livable planet, and we are here to collect. But we must also be clear, we live in a much harsher world than in 2015. Wars, authoritarianism, and geopolitical rivalries have shrunk the space for justice. The climate emergency has become the defining injustice of our time. In this context, business as usual multilateralism is not enough. The UN itself is under threat, but is also being hollowed out by the very governments that claim to defend it. Our task is not to just defend the SDGs, but to reimagine global cooperation rooted in justice, solidarity, and intergenerational responsibility. Friends, anniversaries are not just for reflection, they should be about renewal. So let us, at this moment, organize across borders, led by those most affected, the poor, indigenous peoples, women, and youth. Secondly, expose the hypocrisy of governments and corporations who parade the SDG logos while funding war and fossil fuels. Thirdly, build alliances between movements for climate, racial, gender, and economic justice. We have far too long ignored the wisdom given to us by the feminist movement when they urged us decades ago to embrace the idea of intersectionality and understand how different struggles are connected. If anything, this moment is a time for us to turbocharge intersectionality. And finally, we have to insist that the next decade is not lost to excuses, but is won by courage. As the African proverb reminds us, when the music changes, so must the dance. The music of history is changing. It's time for us to dance differently, with urgency, honesty, and hope. The SDGs may be under attack, but the deeper vision they represent of dignity, equality, and sustainability belongs to all of us. Let us reclaim it, transform it, and fight for it with all the creativity and courage we can muster. If we don't do that, then people will continue, as we talked about the MDGs before, as a massive diversionary gimmick or minimalist development goals, as Kofi Annan used to call it. So if we don't address this with seriousness, we will have people saying the SDG stands for seriously decorated graphics, or some dreams only guaranteed, or socially distanced goals, or if you want, on a more political basis, sustainably dodging government, slogans disguised as goals, shuffling deadlines globally. So we must recognize now that young people across the world are saying what is needed is not incremental tinkering with a broken system. We cannot refuse to learn from the crises that we have seen time and time again, whether it was the Asian financial crisis, global financial crisis, or COVID. When we're in the crisis, our leaders talk about build back better. The world needs a new global financial architecture and so on. But once we get out of the crisis, they put a band-aid on it, and it's always business as usual. And what we see is the DNA of governments is all about system recovery, system protection, and system maintenance. And what, dear friends and colleagues, we need desperately now is to have an approach that is about system innovation, system transformation, and system redesign. I'd like to end with the words of an African anti-colonial leader, Amilcar Cabral, when he said, "True freedom fighters and those seeking justice should tell no lies and claim no easy victories." We should embrace that right now. And we should also be willing to say to ourselves that even us, we must be willing to question the ways that we operate, the way that we campaign. As Albert Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get different results. So we too must be willing to ask the question, what do we continue to do? What do we stop doing? And what do we do in a different way? And I would like to end with this line. My one sentence analysis was given to me by my son when he said to me, "You guys are not good at what you'll do." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because you'll aim all your messages and narratives at the brain and you'll ignore the heart, the body, and the soul. Unless we can start talking about what we engaged in less policy heavy ways, we will leave people behind. We have to harness the power of arts and culture if we want to move people forward." Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody. That was 9 minutes on my timer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, you have said so many hashtag quotes, which will, I'm sure, we will be tweeting. But I think it's really true that we have too much only on the mind, and we have to allow the hearts to speak and ensure we have a dance, which is really apt for this particular very critical time that we're facing. Thank you so much, Kumi, for your very inspiring start to this reflection on how we need to move ahead. May I request now, and thank you also for me for keeping the time and giving us. Actually, we started 4 minutes late, and I think it's just carrying on, but I'm sure we will make it. May I request Flora Sonkin of Civil Society FfD Mechanism to kindly share. This is no hierarchy or segregation or discrimination, but this is all already agreed on. So this you have 6.5 minutes, Flora. I hope it is okay, and I'm sure you have much more to say. I won't take any more of your time, please.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and really appreciate Kumi's energizing and inspiring words. I'll do my best to summarize in those minutes some of the outcomes of the civil society forum that happened just before FfD4, the Financing for Development conference in Sevilla. And as Kumi said, our struggles are very much interconnected and cross-cutting. So I think the messages that came from civil society that gathered there on economic justice are very much intertwined with a lot of the struggles from different movements that are here today. So in July, we were actually over 1,000 members of civil society organizations, trade unions, movements and networks from around the world that gathered both with the Feminist Forum and a CSO Forum ahead of FFD4. And this is a sort of declaration that is both a reaction to the outcome, the Compromiso de Sevilla, and also a political statement that reflects the shared recommendations that we wanted to convey to UN member states and the international community. So I'm not going to repeat some of the things that were already said in terms of how the UNGA, but also the meeting in Sevilla happened at a time that we're reeling with multiple intersecting crises, growing inequalities within and between countries, debt burdens that are faced most heavily by countries in the global south, that really heavily undermines the realization of human rights and public services, structural gender and racial inequalities, shrinking civic space, conflict and militarism rising, cuts in ODA that fail to uphold longstanding commitments, while at the same time governments are spending trillions on wars and genocide, the planetary crisis and growing fractures in the multilateral trade system. And of course, as Paul already mentioned, the SDGs are very heavily off track, with some of the targets even reversing. But we see this massive challenges that we face in a systemic nature. And despite their gravity that we are very much aware of, they're not unsurmountable, but they are actually deeply entrenched and reproduced by the deeply inequitable design of the current international financial architecture and the global economy. So what we see is that overcoming these global challenges is actually a political choice that requires real commitment to justice, to equity, to democracy, and to the overall well-being of people and the planet in a way that we have continuously failed to see from decision makers, particularly those in the global north who actually benefit from the status quo. So we saw that by adopting this Compromiso de Sevilla, member states actually compromised on the ambition that they should have delivered to reflect on the urgency of our times. And we think that the lack of transparency and accountability of the process that we saw leading towards Sevilla, that excluded civil society from access and the last rounds of negotiation, cannot set precedent for future processes. So we remain actually very concerned, and we want to call out the lack of political will to embrace the bold reforms that we need, and also calling out the blockage of the progress that we saw during the negotiations, particularly by global north countries, which continue to protect the undemocratic institutions where they hold most decision-making power. We also particularly wanted to flag the opposition to proposals for actionable mandates for the reform of the international debt and aid architecture, which is actually a precondition to redress the colonial legacies that are so enshrined in the current financial architecture, and that actually offer the ways to unlock the needed resources that countries in the South need to finance their own development. And this is not a matter of charity, but actually a matter of justice. And this is what civil society present in Sevilla and engaged in the FfD process continues to call out. Unfortunately, what we saw was actually a compromise to the lives of millions of people in the South that were living under the subjugation of unsustainable debt, compounded by the hardest impact of a climate and ecological crises to which they did so little to contribute to. And as usual, women are forced to bear the largest burden in times of crises and fill in for the gaps resulting for austerity. So a feminist approach to financing for development, which is what we're calling for, demands that these cross-cutting issues remain central in all areas of global economic governance. Civil society forum participants also raised the alarm on how no real financial justice can be reached without an urgent end to escalating wars, territorial invasions, and genocides. We reject the failure of global North governments to uphold long-standing global commitments on climate, ecological, and development finance, while trillions are spent on war and genocide. We reject the militarization of aid and the diversion of development cooperation towards security objectives that perpetuate inequality and harm, and demand redirecting military spending towards financing public services, social infrastructure, and environmental resilience. Obviously, time to act is now and is actually long gone. We feel like it's really important to reiterate that if member states are serious about their claims to support inclusive, fair, and democratic and sustainable development for all, and to truly strengthen multilateralism, the FfD4 and of course the outcomes of UN General Assembly should reflect a genuine partnership between rights holders, member states, and development partners that is actually strengthening the integrity and ambition of the financing for development agenda that is also, of course, very much intertwined with the SDGs agenda. So I think it's important to continue pushing and reiterating that we should accept nothing less than a commitment to follow up from the commitments of Sevilla, ensuring that meaningful progress on the reform of the international financial architecture takes place. And this includes the commitment towards legally binding frameworks on international tax, sovereign debt, and international development cooperation. And it's really key that civil society remains strong and united in sustaining those long-standing demands way beyond Sevilla. We will remain in solidarity with movements around the world fighting for ecological, racial, economical, and political justice, and for a world where everyone has the right to live with dignity, free from oppression, and fulfill their potential to enjoy all of human rights. So it's high time that we put pressure on the UN to uphold the very principles of decolonization and promotion of human rights that it was founded upon. I think I'll leave it at that, not to spend more minutes, but yeah, hope that message was clear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Flora. You've been very crisp and to the point. Really, nothing more can be stressed than the kind of interventions that you have made at the international, the FfD, and this whole aspect of spending on the defense and not having an architecture that will ensure a financial inclusion for those who are left behind. And this whole fight that you have taken up on the issue of tax and debt are really phenomenal, but I think the fight has to continue. Thank you very much, especially also for being so crisp and finishing on time. Thank you. And a big welcome to Mandeep Tiwana, who's taken as the Secretary General of CIVICUS. Congratulations, Mandeep. Mandeep heads, as all of you know, CIVICUS, which is one of the, if not one of the largest civil society coalition across the world. Not just only civil society, but also taking up the issues of human rights and access to development. Yes, Mandeep, your time. I'm sorry to say that 4.5 minutes.
Thank you, Paul, and warm greetings to the GCAP family. Kumi and Flora have made my job so much easier, and thank you for this opportunity to share some views on the SDGs and the world at large. So we are living in bizarre times. Despite all the scientific, technological, and cultural progress humanity claims to have made, we are living in times when there's wars, economic deprivation, climate change, gender and racial injustice, and gratuitous cruelty that's happening around the world. And I think this should give us cause to think as civil society, where have we failed and what more do we need to do? The SDGs are imperfect, but arguably they are the greatest ever human endeavor to create peaceful, just, equal, and sustainable societies. In fact, they draw directly from the UN Charter, whose preamble says that makes a commitment to save future generations from the scourge of war, to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, dignity, and equality between men and women, and also between nations large and small, to create conditions for justice under international law, as well as to ensure that states meet their obligations, and, and fourthly, to create social progress and better standards of living for all in larger freedom. But if we look at what's happening around the world today, we have $2.7 trillion in spending for defense. I'd rather say it's offense that's happening around the world. And the very countries that are permanent members of the UN Security Council are the ones that are fomenting war and conflict around the world that is causing so much suffering. And, and here I also want to take a moment to recognize the victims of the wars in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Sudan, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Myanmar, and elsewhere, who, despite all our efforts as humanity, are continuing to suffer. And I think that is a collective failure of all of us today, if we have so many wars and that bring out the basest of human instincts. The second point I wanted to raise is, since the founding of the UN, in the mid 20th century, we've been making progress in the 20th century on human rights and social justice values. But in the 21st century, we seem to be reversing. 70% of the world's population live in authoritarian societies where the core civic freedoms of peaceful assembly, association, and expression, which are part of the constitutions of almost every country, are being repressed in insidious ways. Our colleagues are being persecuted, our organizations are being shut down, our right to come out onto the streets is being clamped down upon, and this should give us thought that we really need to reinvigorate ourselves. But it's not just that the 30% of the world's population that doesn't live in overly authoritarian societies is having an easy time. They too are suffering, and our democracies are being taken over by populist leaders. So these should all give us cause for concern in this particular moment. And more importantly, I think the struggle for equality, for justice, is being undermined by xenophobia, racism, gender-based discrimination, and the fact that there are individuals who can send rockets to the moon, but 700 million people go hungry every night. And that is, I think, a supreme injustice that all of us need to recommit ourselves to working. We at CIVICUS have also been thinking, what do we do? Where did we go wrong? I think many of us spent a lot of energy, spent a lot of our social capital in trying to get close to decision makers, to those who hold power. And we need to act, but we were barking up the wrong tree because we were hoping for top-down change that would trickle down to people. But actually, we failed to connect with people. We failed to speak to their hearts and minds and souls, as Kumi mentioned. So we really need to communicate directly to people. We need to connect with individuals and movements that are at the forefront of social change. And there are so many new movements and so many new activists that are out there on the streets fighting the good fight. And we need to support them and stand in solidarity with them and join them and lead and follow the way for them. And we have 24 to 48 months to act. And I just want to highlight here, we have the COP coming up in Belém later this year. We have the UN Secretary General selection process where we must push for the appointment of a feminist woman Secretary General to lead the world. And of course, we have the 2027 SDG Summit where we must recommit to ensuring better realization of the goals. But let me stop there and wish you all the best, and please be assured of our solidarity at CIVICUS.
Thank you so much, Mandeep. As usual, the polemic, 2.7 trillion, and going only for the war and defense, and supposed to be offense, as you said, and 700 million people going hungry. And have we really let our people down by really not tackling also at our own country levels, is what, Mandeep, thank you very much. And I also would like thank you for your time, crispness. I'd like to highlight one of the comments that Gillian said, Mandeep, which in the chat also says there's a big disconnect between the people, their hopes, and the kind of people we put in the government. Not just government in our own countries, but also at the way they're being represented here. So how do we take this forward in the little time that we have ahead? I thank you very much. John Romano, do you want a minute now at this stage?
Sure,
Or
thanks.
later? Yeah, go ahead, John.
Sure, thanks very much, Paul. And I'm glad I'm not expected to provide a substantive intervention after those really great insights shared. This is more of an administrative point here, but I just wanted to share an opportunity that we have after this People's Assembly event. It's an interactive virtual workshop that we're hosting alongside Accountability Lab, CIVICUS, Forus, Oxfam, Transparency International, and CUNO. It's a dialogue on existential threats to civil society, really hoping to unpack, where are some of the touch points, the anxieties that colleagues are feeling, existential threats to civil society, which we know are more prevalent than ever before, and unpack where are the areas that we can build solidarity, as Kumi mentioned. I think now is the time for cross-fertilization, exploring how we share and learn from one another in these really trying times for civil society. So I'll put a link in the chat box here in case you want to register and join. It's a really informal workshop style format for us to really unpack, share, and learn from one another around some of these threats that we're facing collectively. So we hope you'll join us. Please do register if interested. And also say this is part of a dialogue series. So if you can't join for this workshop, we'll have other opportunities for dialogues in future, including at International Civil Society Week, of course, hosted by CIVICUS in November. So please do register if interested, and I'll throw all of the information for you in the chat box. Thanks.
Thank you, John. You didn't say you were not going to give a substantive thing, but I think it is really quite substantive. I think it's a very crucial workshop. Really, I would encourage all of us to join that workshop. It's a very cross-cutting aspect, not just looking at what is not happening and the kind of terrible things that are happening, but some of the solutions, some of the aspects that we can do to address that. I think it's a very good workshop. Thank you. I'd also encourage, some of us have other commitments, but John has promised that there may be recording available, but also other series that we'll have. Thank you, John. We've slightly changed the photo op. We thought we will have it at this time, but there's a technical snag in that if we open the cameras, we will not be able to close it again. So we are requesting kindly stay till the end, but it's a good thing for those of you who stay till the end. You will have a nice photo to take home. So please stay till the end and we'll have a good photo op. I would also take the reflections that we are supposed to have for about 4 minutes because of the time that is already we have extended more about 12 minutes now. So I request us to push it to the next. If you can stay with your comments, please use the chat as much as possible. But really, I see there's some good comments that are also coming apart from some information. So we move on to, if you're okay, shall we move on to the next dialogue? And I would request, and I see all those who are meant to be at the next are already here. So allow me to go to the next dialogue. May I request now Beena Palikal, who's the convener of the Asia Dalit Rights Forum, to speak in this whole dialogue session. We have 4 or 3.5 minutes for each speaker. It really moves fast. So I request all of you to make time. Bina, please. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, you're audible.
Can you hear?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a message. I'm sorry, I'm logging in from Colombo and the heavy rains here just now. So please excuse me if it gets cut off, but I'll try to use lesser than 3 minutes. So we've all been part of the whole MDG process and the shift from MDGs to SDGs, and how data was manipulated during the MDGs. We see that the same trend is happening today. I would not like to mention countries or take any names of countries, but that is what is happening. Even in the official report, the UN SDG report of 2025, that revealed that only 35% of the SDG targets are actually on track, or which is only 30, which are with the on what we have the data on. But there is almost all the goals that we are not on track, which is a huge concern for many of us. While we were part of, the framing, and we felt that in the framing as well, a lot of the concerns of the marginalized communities were not taken up when we framed the whole SDG goal. Now we are 10 years down, and we're looking at reviewing these 10 years, and it just seems that we're going back. In many of the goals, we know, if you look at the graph of the goals, that we're regressing. We're actually going backwards. With the recent backlash on health and sexual rights of women, gender rights, we are almost like going back to the square one, or going back to the drawing table to look at, what is that? What is this? How we're going, almost in the reverse rather than progressive. So when we're talking about substantive equality and we're talking about progressive realization, it's almost, these are just words that sound very nice, but when we're looking at the actual implementation of it, we know that that is not happening. I'm more concerned with the fact that on the ground level, while many countries are saying that, they're reporting at the SDGs and that the VNRs are just fantastic, they give fantastic reports, the situation of people on the ground are still remain as it is, like we had seen earlier. So what do these goals mean for communities discriminated on work and descent, like Dalit communities or indigenous communities? And how do we look at these intersections of women within these communities, or the trans communities within these communities, that we still have we're still fighting for the basic rights, whether it be children still dying of malnutrition, whether it is access to health rights, or whether it is to have or push for financial allocations to ensure that some of these programs are being set up for the community. So I think we're still there at the basic level. So if you look at the overall goals, I don't want to go into that because I think many of us have access to this report. Many of us have access to these graphs where it shows where we're progressing and where we're regressing. It's really a matter of concern that the situation of communities that we are representing is still at a very difficult time. Of course, this is then exacerbated by conflicts, vulnerabilities, limited fiscal space. There is a very limited fiscal space. What is the private sector doing? What is the financing for development happening? I think if we look at the cross-cutting of all these different policies and mechanisms that are there in place today, it's not really working. So I'm going to throw out some questions to all of us, and I want us to all collectively reflect that, do we go back to the drawing room? What do we do differently in the next 10 years? Can we hold the private sector accountable for the things that they have to do? Can we hold all these 10 billionaires, who live in my country, hold them accountable for what is happening, for the poverty levels that are still there? Or can we hold ourselves accountable? And how do we move forward for the next, till 2030? I think it's 5 more years to 2030. What is it that we do differently? I don't know if I should be. I am hopeful, definitely, but I don't know at this point, looking at the situation, looking at, the conditions across globally, the wars and the vulnerabilities, and how democracies have been shut down, and how different regimes are taking over that are almost pulling the rug under our feet and taking our human rights away from us. We are in a very critical time, and it's really important that we have more of these conversations, that we could then think of a different strategy probably in the next 10 years to see how we turn it around. And we must be very cautious of data that has been manipulated at the highest levels, and be cautious of that, because that's what it's going to have. One last point and I'll stop, that we must also be really critical, and not critical, but cautious of the fact that civil society voices are being shut down by governments and states. And if our voices are shut down, then tomorrow there will be nobody to ask for accountability. So how do we take that into concern as well as we move ahead? I'm leaving here with a lot of questions in my head, because we've been part of this process since the MDG time, and we're still wondering how that has impacted on the ground. And I hope the next time that we meet, we have more solutions than questions, but leaving here with hope and solidarity. Jai Bhim. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beena. You're representing the communities discriminated on work and dissent, one of the communities that have been long not only left behind, but completely invisibilized. And thank you for bringing their focus up, not only theirs, but this whole gap between the aspirations that we have raised because of the SDGs and the way things have been going without any source of accountability and way. But of course, we cannot let people down, like the previous speakers have said, and we need to keep the fight going, at the same time the dialogue open. Thank you very much. May I request speaker from the women's constituency? Here we have Maria Ines Ray from the Women's Major Group. Over to you, Maria, please. And you also have 3.5 minutes. I know we are exceeding, but kindly try to limit to max 4 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to speak in Spanish because it's easier for me.
Okay.
Estoy realmente muy feliz de estar en este evento tan importante y haber escuchado las presentaciones que me precedieron. Me da un marco excelente del diagnóstico de situación actual del mundo, pero yo los voy a llevar más a hablar de América Latina para comentarles la situación más específica de mi región. Yo pertenezco a la Red de Salud de las Mujeres Latinoamericanas y del Caribe, la organización feminista más antigua de la región, con 1.500 organizaciones de todos los países de nuestra región. También la red es parte de la coordinación del mecanismo de participación de sociedad civil para el desarrollo sostenible en la región, con más de 500 organizaciones, y obviamente también participo como parte organizadora del grupo mayor de mujeres, que tiene la función principal de contribuir a que las organizaciones feministas se involucren significativamente en la Agenda 2030. Como ustedes saben, América Latina es la región más desigual del mundo. Históricamente es un tema estructural de América Latina, no solamente la pobreza, sino la inequidad, la desigualdad. Tenemos casi el 40% de población viviendo en situación de pobreza, del cual más del 10% está en situación de pobreza extrema. Pero bueno, aquí se representa la desigualdad con el 10% de las personas con mayores ingresos concentrando el 66% de la riqueza de la región. Algunas particularidades de América Latina, entre muchas otras, pero que a mí me parecen más importantes, es que tenemos una situación de laicidad de nuestros estados que es muy débil, con una influencia muy visible de las religiones en las decisiones de los estados, Y además tenemos una persistencia de estructuras culturales patriarcales. El patriarcado en América Latina está más vivo y más dinámico que nunca. Esto obviamente tiene impactos en todos los ODS, yo voy a tomar solo dos. Respecto al ODS 3, que es el que tiene que ver con salud, tenemos la segunda tasa más alta del mundo de embarazo en la adolescencia, luego de África subsahariana, y tenemos más del 70% de nuestras mujeres viviendo en países con leyes restrictivas en materia de aborto, lo cual obviamente determina altas tasas de mortalidad materna por causas prevenibles. Y respecto al ODS 5, que tiene que ver con igualdad de género, tenemos 1 de cada 4 mujeres menores de 15 años que han sufrido violencia física o sexual. Tenemos 4.500 femicidios anualmente, que es una cifra que se mantiene estable desde hace muchos años. Y además, lo que es muy llamativo, América Latina es la única región del mundo en donde las uniones tempranas y matrimonios infantiles se encuentran en aumento. Entonces, ¿cuáles son para mí los desafíos? Son muchos, aquí tomo dos. Uno que yo creo que es compartido con el resto del mundo, no solamente no solamente tiene que ver con América Latina, que es sostener la relevancia de las declaraciones y compromisos de Naciones Unidas en este contexto de grandes cambios en el sistema multilateral, y frente a estas iniciativas que están desacreditando el rol de las Naciones Unidas desde muchos ámbitos. Y creo que el segundo desafío, que es regional, pero yo creo que lo compartimos con otras regiones también, que es la falta de cumplimiento de las políticas públicas y las normativas vigentes, por determinantes que son muy complejos y múltiples, pero en donde yo creo que tienen un rol fundamental la corrupción, la falta de presupuestos o la reasignación de los presupuestos a otras políticas, y las grandes deficiencias en los modelos de gestión de los estados. Yo voy a dejar aquí, creo que cumplí el tiempo. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Maria. Very crisp, very sharp, up to the point, really bringing us to notice the particularity in terms of the concerns that the Latin America is facing. And you really brought it up, and also asking us to really relook at some of these things and go forward. And I think I really appreciate you and the entire women's major group and the constituencies who have brought in so much of sharpness and an advocacy traction more than many of the other constituencies. But thank you once again and congratulations. But also ensuring that we highlight some of these aspects that you have mentioned, the poor and the extreme poor, and the whole aspect of teenage pregnancies and others that we really need to take into account. Thank you very much. We now come to one of the most powerful constituencies, the major group for children and youth. And we have Naveen Gautam, who is representing the MGCY, the major group and for children and youth here. So Naveen, I know you have a lot more to say, but we may have to restrict you to again 3.5 minutes, please.
Sure, Paul. Sure. I'll just use my energy to finish it off soon. So yeah, welcome. Hello, Jai Bhim, Salam Alaikum and Namaskar. And I'll just take a personal angle instead of the whole global and community aspect, because I myself remember growing up in a small village in Raebareli, that's a district in India, and witnessing the whole caste-based discrimination, which even Tina and Paul have also very specifically talked about, which has been kind of shaping my resolve to fight for justice, especially as a youth. And as a first generation Dalit lawyer itself from the community and the extended family, it's been like quite struggling aspect while I have been working on the grassroots with the CSOs, especially as a youth for children and youth as well. And too often, I mean, the young people are not heard. That's a reality. Sometimes dismissed as incapable in making decisions rather than recognized as a change agent. And I think it is the time when we talk about SDGs, it's almost 10 years. It is actually the time to actually listen to us, but also to truly understand what our realities are and what our issues are, which we have been facing, and involve in the meaningful decision-making process. And this is one thought which I also keep thinking again and again all the time is I wish the youth came after the old age so that the elders could also experience what we go through and truly understand it instead of just patronizing or giving advices a number of times. So that's another aspect which I think I wish that was possible. So today I represent, as Paul says, MGCY, and we are in solidarity with all the young people who, despite struggle and suffering, continue to lead and champion the fight for social justice. Just a brief info about MGCY, which serves as a designated self-organized space for youth to engage in over 50 intergovernmental and 100 multi-stakeholder processes at the United Nations, and has a global membership of around 20,000 organizations. And this year, we are not only marking 10 years since the establishment of the SDGs, we are also marking more than 30 years since the Rio Convention and Agenda 21. And across these milestones, youth constituencies have consistently played a central role in shaping intergovernmental frameworks, including the SDGs, the Paris Agreement, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, and of course, one of the most important part is the Sendai framework for the disaster risk reduction altogether. And it is also important to recall that the youth advocacy was instrumental in securing the recognition of SDG 10 on inequalities and SDG 12 on sustainable consumption and production. And apart from that, we also would like to highlight the key milestones which the youth have kind of engaged in and achieved. And one of the most important part is the ECOSOC Youth Forum itself, which happened this year in April. And it began in 2011 with 3 hours of dialogue at the United Nations headquarters. And today, 16 years later, and almost 10 years of adoption of SDGs, it has grown into a 3-day global gathering, and it was massive. And it convenes, it has member states, it has youth stakeholders, civil societies, and partners, and its outcomes systematically feed into HLPF and General Assembly, which is kind of happening right now. And one of the major successes is that recently it is the ECOSOC Youth Forum has also kind of ensured that we have a space not only for tokenism, but also a strong representation of the historically most marginalized groups, especially like communities discriminated on work and dissent. And when the UN 75 process happened back in 2020, 5 years back, and SDGs were kind of adopted 10 years ago, it gave young people a promise of reinvigorated multilateralism. Let's talk about multilateralism now. And the UN80 process cannot take away that hope. Now, UN80 must strengthen and not backslide programmatic work of the UN on specific youth issues, expanding throughout all the constituencies and all the intersectional dimension. And the reform must not negatively affect the staff working on the youth and civil society issues and major groups and other stakeholders, but must have direct ways to provide inputs into the process, as I mentioned earlier as well when I talk about tokenism. And finally, let me just highlight the role of MGOS, which is very important. Resolution 67 by 290 and several other subsequent resolutions have expanded their mandate and participated across the UN system. And this principle must remain front and at the very center. It must be embedded by the design in all new processes, whether high-level meetings, thematic work streams, or programmatic initiatives. And rights holders should not have to fight process by process for inclusion, and that is specifically for the youth altogether. And so as we look ahead, as MGCY will continue to play an active role in advancing these priorities, ensuring that the next decade of multilateralism, which we're talking about constantly, is more inclusive, more accountable, and more responsive altogether. But before I end it, this is very important, and I'm glad that we are having a discussion on this in this discussion as well. We are also witnessing a massive ongoing genocide, conflicts tearing apart societies, and of the loss of thousands of children and youth across so many countries. And it compels us to ask, what does the future of multilateralism looks like, especially for the youth, especially for the children? And as we have been kind of taking a strong stand, we take a strong stand again. We reiterate a call for an immediate ceasefire in all ongoing conflicts and affirm that we stand in solidarity with Palestine and communities everywhere who are suffering today. And today, we all are Palestine. Jai Bhim. Back to you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen, for this very important reminder that the violence that is going on across the world is affecting much, much more children and youth, because we really do not know how their minds are being, not just bodies, but minds are being seared apart. And the images and others that they are having, the impact it will have on the generations, current and also the future generations. So it's a very important that we ensure that we have a multilateralism which will protect that. Thank you very much for also finishing it on time. We have an announcement that C for UN, which was earlier the UN We Want, is actually live tweeting this whole event. So thank you, Jeff, for making it known. And also, please do not forget to have hashtag People's Assembly as you tweet, because this is one thing we hope will reach those who really need to hear these voices, that we need to make it a better traction. So please have it and use this hashtag as you tweet. And thank you, Jeff, for reminding us that you're tweeting and making sure that we continue to strengthen the demand for an effective multilateral systems to continue. Finally, in this section, we have Ollie Henman, who does not need an introduction. He's here representing Action for Sustainable Development, but as you know, he also heads one of the co-heads of co-leads for the major group and other stakeholders. I know you're in a lovely garden somewhere in Bath, I think. So please, over to you, Ollie. I'm sorry, you also have 3.5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul, and greetings to everyone. Wonderful to join this session, and thank you to all the excellent speakers who've already been here. Great to see so many. I see Kumi, I see Ingo, so many great colleagues. Thank you to everyone. I'm actually sitting in a garden, that was the garden of Haile Selassie when he was in exile from Ethiopia, when he came during the fascist times and lived in Bath, actually. So this morning I've been in a session where we've been looking at how we might celebrate that history of Haile Selassie in Bath through potentially planting with Ethiopian plants in this garden. So it's part of that connection of the struggle against fascism, the struggle for internationalism, solidarity, that is so important to all of our work. As you highlighted, Paul, I'm one of the co-chairs of the major groups and other stakeholders, and I think it's been really a testament to the strength of all the different constituencies to hear the different views and the viewpoints that we've had so far, to really ensure that diversity of voices is heard throughout UN processes. We are seeing that under threat, and when we look back to 2015, many of us were there. We remember how there was that moment that Obama at that time was able to bring a number of key leaders together alongside China, alongside the EU, alongside Brazil, alongside South Africa, so many key nations. And we don't see that kind of level of unity anymore. Instead, we see a US president who makes a mockery of the whole process and deliberately insults many other leaders around the world. And so we are living in a very difficult time. But we need to stand together as never before. We need to ensure as many diverse voices are heard in the UN processes. We were glad during the HLPF this year that we did have agreement from the president of ECOSOC, Bob Rae, to ensure that the participation of stakeholder groups was properly recognized in the SDG process through a new handbook, which will now go on. And we know that the next ambassador from Nepal is going to continue that strong work and has already offered to have regular meetings with all the stakeholder groups. So there are small windows of hope. We need to prize those open and make bigger gaps for entry points for so many civil society groups. I wanted to highlight, looking forward, a few key moments, as you had mentioned. So we're now looking towards the next SDG summit, which will be in 2027. So put that in your diaries. We know that officially the UN has said that will be the point at which the official discussions start for what comes beyond 2030. So we need to be prepared. We need to mobilize ourselves before that SDG summit in 2027, so we have a clear set of demands ready to go when we come to that SDG summit, so we can help to shape what comes next. We can't let the future be left in the hands of some of the leadership that we've seen in recent years. So we need to make sure we have a strong offer, a strong proposition when we come to 2027, and then from 2027 through to 2030, that will be the key moment for us to mobilize, to engage, to strengthen our advocacy activities with leaders who are willing to express a different worldview, and to make sure that we get something even stronger beyond 2030. Of course, it's going to be a difficult time. We don't know exactly what will happen at the next US elections, for example, but we need to be ready. We need to have our clear demands. One thing I've had in terms of some of the suggestions from some of the more friendly member states is that they see the most likely will be some form of continuation of the goals, potentially adding some additional elements that were missing in 2015. But I think the appetite is not there to reopen the whole debate, because the risk there is that actually we end up with something much weaker. So I think we're really looking at how do we build on these goals? How do we look at what additional elements are needed, what additional modifications are needed, and how can we be at the forefront of that discussion going forward? So thank you again to everyone on this call, and thank you to you, Paul, for your excellent moderation. I'll pass back to you.
Thank you, Ollie. You're really preparing us already for the next phase. Only 10 years passed, but still very critical. If you don't prepare from now, we have 1.5 years more to really prepare for the time when really what next comes. I think before it gets firmer, our seed of our demands need to be seeded in. And thank you very much for bringing us that. And I think I'm sure, major group and other stakeholders and others together, you will have several series where some of these can be put forward, not to make it weaker, but definitely building on the strengths, that some of the strengths that we have noticed, so that, we can have some amount of better accountability and bringing it back to the nation states in terms of better policies and affecting the people on the ground. So thank you very much, Ollie, for your very interesting awareness of what we have ahead. Friends, I have a request from Sylvia. Yes, Sylvia. Sylvia represents the stakeholder groups, the constituency of aging. And Sylvia, can I restrict you to three minutes, just so that we can ensure that we can finish on time? Can you unmute and have your video on, if it's possible? I think Rose is trying to. Yeah, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. I'll try and put my video on, but I have an erratic computer. Excuse me. But
go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. One of the things I represent the Grey Panthers, and we're a member of GCAP, proud to be a member of GCAP. And nobody has mentioned yet the World Social Summit, second World Social Summit in Qatar, which is going to meet in November. And this is to take forward the commitments made in 1995, which agreed to put people at the center of development. And it made historic commitments, as you know, on poverty eradication, decent work, and social inclusion. And it specifically laid the basis for the rights of persons with disabilities, for older persons, for youth, and for the family. What can we expect? Are we cynical? Are we hopeful? It will reaffirm these historic commitments and present solutions. So what are they? Intersectionality was brought out by Kumi. It's really important for those of us as we age and those in elder age now, that we take stock of that word. The word is transformative. Why? We live in an aging world. We must act together and be activists together. We are in historic global shifts. There are more children and young people than ever before. There are more older people than ever before. What does it mean? We must act together. We must have intergenerational partnerships. And what I want to say about Copenhagen is that it laid the basis for our rights, which we take for granted and which are ignored by the mainstream. Older people still don't have their rights along with others, and rights are fundamental. Those of us there in Copenhagen, we fought hard for those rights we take for granted. And they're now being eroded, as we've heard, by despots, war, bad governments, leaders, global obsession with material wealth and power, not well-being, dignity, fairness, and decency. So I really urge all of us in this assembly to highlight that the old and the young must stand together to remember why we struggle and to be activists together and bridge the generational divide. Intersectionality is a real challenge, and it's an innovation in itself. It has no age limit. Let us dance differently, young and old, in all our diversity. We can co-create just, inclusive, and sustainable futures. Thanks so much for this opportunity, Paul. We really appreciate it in the stakeholder group. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Yes, of course, we cannot. I often, I do not know whether you or Francis used to say this is the only group where all of us will one day have to fight for, because we are growing and we have not sufficiently focused the issues of the old. And I also see Catherine also mentioning here in the chat that still we don't have a convention on aging, and we really need to support. And thank you very much for pointing us to be more aware and alert, especially on the upcoming World Social Summit, and bring some of these issues to the core there. Thank you very much, Sylvia, for taking this up. Friends, now we are, I do not know how to say this, but we're opening the floor, but we only have a few minutes. Best if you put your chat, put your comments or questions on the in the chat. So I'll just share a few that my colleagues have placed it. So there is one which Hemchandra Basappa says that we about the whole politicians are aware of the problems. He's questioning that, and whether, secondly, do they have a kind of resources that is required to transform us all? Do the very rich who control and manage economies and politicians really understand the problem? I think these are all million-dollar questions, and I think all of us are struggling with that. Hemchandra, thank you for bringing them again. And Sylvia has already spoken. Catherine, Kumi has again mentioned that there is a hybrid second global activism convening in Salvador, Bahia, from 3rd to 5th of November, which is it coinciding with the Doha World Social Summit? Yes, it is. There are other comments. Is there anybody who must speak for 40 seconds? Is there anybody? I don't see anybody's hands. I do not know whether you can lift them, but I request Pradeep. You anyway are part of the organizers, but do you want? Yes, please.
I still have a right. Okay, so Paul, in view of dwindling funding for the civil societies, I think we need to introspect on how best we can use the available resources. I would actually strongly suggest what Mandeep told, that jumping from summit to summit and spending so much of resource and time in that, and we know what we get, we actually redirect resources into the communities, work with the communities, generate awareness, get them together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's an important part. It's maybe, we'll have to reflect. Is it either or how better we can do? Yes, Nelsie, please.
Okay, I can open my camera because the host don't let me.
Yeah, but carry on. We will try to do this at the same time.
Okay.
We can hear you
Voy a
clearly.
hablar en español.
Yes.
Desde la campaña latinoamericana por el derecho a la educación, dos cuestiones que nosotros desde la región América Latina y Caribe y desde la educación sentimos fundamentales. La primera, no podemos seguir trabajando aisladamente con nuestras agendas específicas, sean de género, sean de clima, sean de salud, etcétera, etcétera. Tenemos que ser capaces de intersectar nuestras agendas, porque la interseccionalidad y la intersectorialidad entre nosotros van de la mano, van de la mano. Además, porque tenemos que entrar en una nueva forma de exigir, compartir y demás la cooperación internacional. Es otro gran desafío que tenemos como sociedad civil en momentos donde todos están, y sabemos que eso se pone más difícil por las razones que conocemos. Nos parece que una manera de cambiar el mundo e ir hacia el mundo que queremos es también compartir los recursos y no pelear por ellos como cosa a la que nos ha obligado la cooperación colonial, es decir, decolonizar la cooperación, pero también nuestro manejo de los fondos de cooperación. Eso.
Thank you, Nelsie. The last three comments, if you don't mind, so that we can move on. So I call on Susanita and later Iqbal and then Chinendu Azirim. In that order, please. Yeah, over to you, Sanita. Please speak. Organizers, if you can kindly unmute them in that order. Rose, you're looking at.
Am I heard? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
You can also turn your camera on if you want.
Thank you for this opportunity. And since we are always talking about leaving no one behind when it is SDG, I will just propose or bring into the attention of all of the participants that the ILO recommendation 204, which has been 10 years already last June, is a social protection tool. And if you, and this tool or this ILO 204, if we compare, it's not only under the SDG number 8, but it is almost everywhere in all the SDGs. So I hope that we will try to study also the ILO recommendation 204, but because I know it will really help reduce poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanita, very much for that comment. Iqbal, can you unmute? You can also, yeah, thank you for turning on the camera, please.
Yeah, thank you. I could not open, so that's why. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I am from Bangladesh. Just to highlight two things, that we are asking for funding, but in reality, here in Bangladesh, what we have seen in the last 15 years, that more than $100 billion has been laundered. that is kind of illicit financing has been happening to the abroad. And this is nearly equivalent to 2 years national budget of Bangladesh. So we would like to also raise the voice saying that, yes, your financing support is needed, but the rich countries, you should stop the illicit financing that countries like Bangladesh, from Bangladesh is being laundered, and bring back the money that has been laundered to your country. So that would be our call. Thank you.
Thank you. Very important in curbing the illicit finance flows. Yeah, it's a very important point. Thank you very much. Yes, Chanendu Izirim, sorry, I'm not pronouncing your name. Please go ahead, unmute and open your video.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, great minds. Thank you for having me on the floor. I am Ezirim Chinedu, the Global Coordinator of the SDGs Changemakers Forum across Africa. Yes, so our 10-year journey has been one of hope, resilience, and shared humanity in this world of, difficulties like the other speakers have spoken, But we are united, aim for progressive and the possible achievable outcomes for all the changemakers across Africa. We have given voice to the youth, empowered women, and built bridges across communities in Africa to make them understand the transformational power on the global promises on achieving local realities. Yes, we must face the truth. The inequalities remains in our 10-year journey of the SDGs, especially on climate threats, as it persists to affect agricultural practices, which is our mainstay across Africa. And a lot of people are left behind. So this 10-year anniversary is not just a celebration, but it's a call to put in more effort, courage, compassion, and our collective effort to actually achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, not just at the end of 2030, but beyond, because the opportunity belongs to all of us. Thank you very much for having me. Ezurim Chinedu, Global Changemaker, SDGs in Africa.
Thank you for this message of hope that you're giving from Africa, but also concerns that you have shared. Yes, thank you very much. Sanju, that was the last question. Unless you really insist, can we go ahead? If you insist, of course. Can you unmute and say?
Okay, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Okay. So I cannot open my video, but anyway, I don't have any question, but I would like to thank every distinguished speakers and the expert. I'm really happy to hear about the emerging issues, and the most important thing is I'm really happy to hear about the aging issues by Sylvia. I was wondering, there is no one to talk about the older people, the burning and the rapidly increasing population. So I would like to request everyone to leave no older people behind in such kind of discussions, and to focus older people as well in all kind of discussions in such kind of platform. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sanju. Very, very important message. And once again, reminding us, Sylvia is very happy, and all of us, because we really need to, we have neglected far enough. So I request Carla now to share the video, and then we go to the final segment. Over to you, Carla. Thank you to those who have produced this wonderful video on this whole. I think it is the issue of debt cancellation demands that they have put, and one of the campaigns that has taken by several coalitions together. Ingo, you want to share a word about this campaign? Or anyone else?
Actually, Noah will talk also about this, and May.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, we now request People's Assemblies and Economic Justice Campaign will be shared by Nuru Maro, who is responsible for Global Call to Action Against Poverty in Africa. Over to you, Nuru.
Thanks, colleague. Oh.
We can hear you clear, loud and clear.
Yes. How about my presentation? You can see my presentation.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, my name is Nuru Maro, as introduced, and I work with the GCAP as an Africa Regional Coordinator. So, and I will be presenting on the economic justice campaign. Since colleagues have already shared a lot about this, I won't go further. I won't go deep on the campaign, just sharing highlight. So what about the campaign, the economic justice campaign? Mobilization part is going as a campaign. It's a global movement of grassroots groups, and this includes the CSO. We have a trade union demanding for transformation of the international financial system. We are united here for the economic, climate, and social justice, but as well as public services and human rights of women and the most excluded groups, including the indigenous group, youth, elder, and other groups. And we started preparing this last year on the Global People's Assembly. And why? It's because, as has been highlighted by several previous speakers, that only 17 of SDG on track. The list remains out of track. And why are they off track? The major reason for the major economic injustices. As we can see, we are in a very critical moment in history where humanity is being confronted with massive economic and climate injustices. And we have been discussing this between the rich countries with the poor countries, but also on fossil fuels with the clean energies, but also we have the system which supports billionaires while leaving the billions trapped in extreme poverty. And for us with economic justice, we say we stand with the billions and not billionaires. And here we are fighting for the new system rooted in equity, dignity, and justice. So what are key demands on this campaign on debt cancellation? As previous speakers also highlighted on unfair debt cancellation, the cancellation of unfair debts, but also we want to change the system, transform the outdated system, especially the international financial architecture, which keeps supporting the billions while the billionaires, while the billions of people, especially from the global south, they are trapped in extreme poverty, and the climate also change, dragging them back to extreme poverty. But also another key demand is to choose hope and justice through debt cancellation. Cannot be done on isolation. We need to build economies through tax justice, which are fair to others, and everybody can access this system, and will create an environment which is fair to everybody. So during the kickoff of the campaign, actually this started earlier this year before the FfD conference, but before the launching of the campaign itself, we secured, we published a statement which was signed by more than 1,000 civil society organizations and from 115 countries, showing power of collective level. So the strength here, it has been a global movement, including the CSEO and other networks and other groups of people. But also this has been launched in our regions and at county level. And next, now we have the Global Days of Action, which coming during the World Bank and IMF meetings next month. And now economic justice mobilization organized at national level and at regional level. And this will be part of the People's Assembly at the community, national and regional level, bringing the marginalized voice together to analyze and bring the message in the media, to politicians, and then to global spaces as well. And so far, the progress made, we have built a coalition across the region in Africa and linked it to Asia and Latin America and the Caribbean. But also we continue mobilizing people assemblies at community and national, regional, and a global level. So the previous videos which Kara shared shows different actions that have taken place at the global stage and community stage, and all of these are building on the same, but also we have forced our demand into global negotiation, as it was in the FfD4 conference and the climate summits. And here for Africa, we just concluded the second African Climate Summit a few weeks ago, but also getting a statement which was signed by more than 1,000 CSO organizations. So, and then being from Africa, and then for reflection from the African part now, as I said, from the Climate Summit, where the civil society organization from Africa have been able to push the key demands of the campaign, and we got commitment on reform of financial system from the outcome document, which is the declaration on the second African Climate Summit. But we got a commitment on pledge of 50 billion USD on climate financing, but also on climate justice, loss and damage have been and adaptation have been prioritized in the World document. But also Africa has recognized itself as being lead in taking action and demanding for change by recognizing the role of youth, women, indigenous communities, and also the strong support for the UN Tax Convention, which is also one of our key demands in our campaign. And now, as we're moving to the plan, we take this fight to the biggest global stage. As you see, we have already done the FfD4 conference, though it wasn't promising, but we have the World Social Summit coming in Doha, and we need to do this to win the universal social protection, and all of us should be, should push for our key demands for the World Social Summit. But we have the COP30 in Brazil, and we must polluters pay and deliver loss and damage, and the G20 coming in South Africa for Global South voices. However, we cannot only claim at the global stage, we should take this action at county level, mobilization. As we know, having declaration in this international forum does not change, but people do. So we really need the mobilization at community level, as the indigenous communities take action at county level, the people in the villages take action in county level, because local mobilization are the one which ensure commitment and they cannot be forgotten, but conferences can be forgotten. But also we know the most vulnerable groups like women, youth, the older person, and indigenous are also custodian of justice in these countries, and they should continue taking action in their places. So we need, as we move forward, to keep putting the pressure from below forces to leader to act at national level, coming to the regional level, and then to global level. So thanks, and our message here, we say, without justice, there is no development. Thanks for the time. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Noru, for your very clear campaign that has been taken. I think it's very, very important. One thing important, I think somebody also had shared in the chat, that we spend so much time on the conference and participating in these conferences without really taking this back to the people. And I think these campaigns really are a way for us to take the message, and then it is the change really needs to start and end there. And this is very important that these campaigns keep us going. So thank you very much, Nuru, for your sharing of the campaign and reminding us once again that we need to make the allocations and the aspects of debt and others which are really fleecing our communities. Now we look at the whole Global Days of Action, which is focusing on institutions, financial institutions, especially World Bank and IMF. I'm not able to unpack this acronym, May. I'm sure you will do it. May
Yes.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
APMDB.
So
Yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead, please.
Yeah. So thank you for this opportunity, and and we're expressing our warmest greetings of solidarity to the GCAP family the world over. So we've heard of the huge challenges that we're facing, but of course, as activists, we never lose hope. And that's why we're continuing the resistance that was shown earlier, The World is Ours, that began in June in Sevilla, but we know that we have to go beyond that. So the next big moment for us is to maximize the meeting of the IMF and the World Bank in October, during which we will hold a Global Week of Action from October 13 to 18. And we are rallying to the call, Stop the Harm, Cancel the Debt, Reparations and Just Transition Now. It's timed with the annual meetings, but of course we're carrying a broad range of issues in which these leading international financial institutions are implicated. So we will raise our range of issues against the injustices of debt bondage. As of last I looked, there's over a 4 trillion financing gap for the SDGs. So where's the money going to come from? How will governments be able to raise those funds when they're also being asked to pay for unsustainable and many debts that have harmed people and communities, which we call illegitimate debts? We're also among the most threatened climate-wise in the world. And even as countries like Pakistan, which has been recently flooded, also the Philippines, and still debts are being claimed from them, no? And also, of course, for economic justice overall, which is, of course, a global campaign of GCAP and which we are part of, because of this very unequal international financial architecture that is bearing down on the global south in particular. So join us on October 13 to 18. Some of the highlights of that week will be, of course, the first day during which we will launch the sign-on statement. Also, there's going to be a People and Nature Tribunal in Latin America, which is virtual. Also, on October 15, a day of action on women in debt, which APMDD will lead, which by the way means Asian People's Movement on Debt and Development. And on the 16th, we come together from wherever we are, virtually and physically, for Global Day of Coordinated Mobilizations. I'm going to share in the chat the flyers in Spanish, English, and French. German is coming up, and feel free to disseminate as widely as possible. And you can write me too for more details and if you're interested to participate. So thank you very much. And thank you for showing that video, The World is Ours. Thanks.
Thank you, May. Can I just ask you to repeat your two slogans on, what did you say? Stop the war, cancel the debt, and one more you said.
Stop. The first one is Stop the Harm, which is really addressing the legacy of destruction of the IFIs and the richest countries and, of course, big corporations. Cancel the debt, reparations, and just transition now, which I'm sure the participants here all address in one way or another. Yeah. So I've shared the flyers in the chat, and you can just distribute them as widely as possible.
Thank you. And I think we should really, towards the end, take some of these slogans. This is very important. Thank you, May. Though some of us may not be able to be with you in those global campaign, but definitely we will remember your demands. Stop the harm, cancel the debt, reparations, and just transition. And also there are other slogans, we've had cancel the debt, change the system. We stand with billions and not with the billionaire, and several others. So please, towards the end, we will practice, or we will shout out these slogans as we close. But thank you very much. But now we have a very powerful speaker. Many of us know. He doesn't need any introduction. The whole world of social watch, he has led. And welcome, Roberto. Over to you. Unfortunately, we have to restrict you also to 4 minutes, but I'm sure you will rock us. Please.
Thank you. I will try to do my best in 4 minutes. The previous intervention, stop the harm. I mean, that's a very powerful message. We have been trying to get there, or to do that, for a long time. And it cannot be done yet. We need more mobilization. In the same way, why cannot the United Nations stop the war and the genocide that is going on, and the many different wars around the world? And the answer is very clear for everybody. In the case of the United Nations, it's because of veto power. So 5 countries have veto power, and if they engage in wars and war crimes, or their allies and friends and so on, they protect them in the wars going on. And the UN is almost, not completely, but almost incapable of stopping it. Why cannot the World Bank, that claims that it is an institution devoted to eradicate poverty, actually eradicate poverty, and instead is doing so much harm? Because of the veto power that very few people know. But the United States has veto power over the World Bank and the IMF. It's the only country with veto power by itself. And the European Union has veto power also if they get their act together, which they don't always do in these institutions. So as I mentioned before in the chat already, the problems are a governance problem. Those institutions are failing because of their bad governance that needs urgently to be changed. 6 weeks from now, there is another summit coming, the World Summit on Social Development, meeting in Qatar, which is a country that has recently been bombed by Israel, punishing the mediator that was making an effort to negotiate a ceasefire, which would be the first step to end the genocide. Now, can you imagine anything more hostile to the very principles of the United Nations than bombing the siege of peace negotiations? Now, that meeting is not about peace, but it's about a very important pillar of the United Nations, which is social development. And it comes 30 years after the first summit of social development. Now, the first summit on social development 30 years ago, it was in a moment when the Cold War had ended and the world was in an euphoria of what are we going to do with the peace dividend, because the end of the Cold War should made a lot of the military expenditures unnecessary, and then we have a lot of money that we should use to save the environment, to save the children, to produce social development. And thus, that summit promised to eradicate poverty. Eradicate, not reduce by half or just complete eradication, and to create social security for everybody. At the same time, the summit was worried about the recently created WTO that was created 1 year before, and that was liberalizing trade and capital flow, at the same time that it was not allowing people to move, and at the same time when it was creating a monopoly over knowledge through the intellectual property system, which created havoc at the times of the COVID pandemic, as we know, but it's still there in place, even when the rest of the system is being challenged. But so the hopes of that moment were not accomplished. And now 30 years after, we are coming back to look at the consequences. And one of the consequences of those failed hopes is the rise of all kinds of movements that are taking advantage of the credibility lost by those that created through instruments like the WTO, the first wave of globalization, of liberal globalization as we know it. And it's now, we are suffering an enormous backlash against that, even if not always in a positive direction. So that is on the table of the social side. Those fears, and which include the fear of the backlash, which includes the fear of the hate messages that the internet is potentializing instead of creating more democracy as we were hoping 30 years ago. So we come together now again, and social development is going to be put back into the UN agenda. That is probably the most important result of that meeting, because there is no money for implementation. The money is being devoted to militarization. So we all know that there is not going to be more ODA on the table. Trade is not being negotiated at the United Nations. Technology transfers only to a very small extent. But if we put social development back in the agenda, it's two key words: the social and the development, which over the last years has been taken out of the UN and put it into the Bretton Woods institutions. And then there will be a follow-up, and in the follow-up and in the reaffirmation of key things that are hinted in the outcome that we can expect out of Doha, like the reaffirmation.
Rose? Ingo? Have we lost?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, sorry. I think very important, but very complex aspects of financial institutions and the way they have manipulated systems, which should have been discussed earlier, but they are bringing it back in different forms. The days of globalization, the so-called opening up, they were saying, but actually trying to completely occupy, and then they call it social systems, and then coming back, putting these agendas again into the UN and also the World Social Development agendas is what has been Roberto was explaining. But I'm sorry that we have lost him. But I think we'll need to really reflect on this as we go. We have, thank you very much, Roberto. I'm sorry that we could not complete that. But maybe if you're back, we can give back, though we are completely out of time. Yeah, we just have 4 minutes left. Of course, I do not know. We have a little bit of a discussion. Maybe we need to forego that part, which I request Ingo to do the closing remarks towards the end. But we have from Brazil, and also looking at the whole aspect of COP 30 that is taking up, and also CSOs and the People's Summit. We have Renata, from the Institute of Gelatis. Over to you, Renata. Welcome back.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. I'm speaking on behalf of Gelatas, the Black Woman Institute based in Brazil, and also the People of African Descent Stakeholder Group. And as we gather here on the road to COP30 with a shared responsibility to ensure this conference becomes a milestone for inclusive participation, ambitious negotiations, and climate justice. Regarding logistics and organization, as we prepare for COP30 in Brazil, we must address both opportunities and concerns, while Brazil, as a democracy, offers the promise of an inclusive conference. After years where civil society spaces were restricted, we still face challenges. Brazilian organizations have received a reduced number of badges and are in dialogue with the COP presidency to renew this decision. Globally, civil society continues to struggle with accreditation and accommodation. This is troubling because COP30 must guarantee broad social participation. Civil society must have the space to voice its demands and organize parallel actions that strengthen negotiations rather than remaining at the margins. On the negotiation process itself, our priority agendas are gender, just transition, and adaptation. Within these discussions, we strongly emphasize the recognition of people of African descent. We are among the communities most affected by the climate crisis, yet we are also the leading forces of climate solutions, building resilience in territories across the globe. In line with Brazil's call for COP30 to be the COP of implementation, we stress that implementation must not be abstract or top-down. Mechanisms must ensure the full participation of civil society, local communities, women, youth, and people of African descent in shaping how global agreements are translated into real transformative action on the ground. Regarding our expectations for COP30, we highlight three key points. First, disaggregated data by race, gender, and other intersectionalities must become a cornerstone of all national climate policies, reflecting the commitments we pursue at the global level. Second, Brazil and all parties must continue to strengthen decision-making spaces for civil society, ensuring active participation in implementing global commitments. And third, the UNFCCC must open legitimate spaces for women and people of African descent, where our voices are recognized and our contributions valued in the negotiation process. At the People's Summit, we also recall Brazil's history of hosting transformative civil society processes. Once again, civil society is rising to this responsibility. The People's Summit to be held at the Federal University of Pará from November 12 to 16 is being built as an open, collaborative, and global space. It will welcome organizations and movements from across the world, structured around a multiple thematic axis. Importantly, it will conclude with public hearing alongside the COP presidency, cultural exchanges, and the drafting of collective positions. This is a reminder that the climate agenda is not only negotiated, it is lived, built, and defended daily by communities. In conclusion, COP30 must not be remembered only for decisions taken in negotiation rooms, but for how it honored and amplified the voices of civil society and the communities on the front lines of the climate crisis. The legitimacy of this COP will be measured not only by the text it produces, but by the inclusion and recognition of those who have too often been left unheard. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. Thank you very much. It's a very important aspect that is going to be in a few, is it in November, October?
It's November.
November. And very important aspects and the processes that you have mentioned. Great to hear and looking forward to the outcomes of these efforts that you and the coalitions are making. Thank you very much. I also would like to say the whole element and the aspect and the demands of the African descent are so critical, and one of the groups that will dig deep into not just aspects for their own, but I think a kind of a decolonization that is really necessary for all of us. Of the cultures that have been not only colonized but completely exploited, and I think some of these concerns need to be brought into climate justice. Not just as a technical part of carbon and also the aspects of other technical elements, but what the people have done, and for no reason they are there again at the end of all the effects of climate aspect, and the climate justice really is really needed, and I think these are very critical aspects that we need to keep in mind. Thank you very much, Renata, for bringing once again to these. Friends, we have come to the end of this, and we have, I would like Ingo to close with his remarks. But before then, it is very difficult to summarize what all has happened, and I will not even attempt, except to say that we have covered a vast area. Several others still have not been touched. The whole aspect of sexuality, LGBTQ, the aspects that some of the thematic aspects that are still going on, the whole aspect and the identity of the indigenous communities have not sufficiently been brought, though many of the speakers have mentioned. There's still so much more. Some of the things that have been mentioned here, as we say, as May was mentioning, some of the things, I'll just say it. I think we should really take these slogans when we go: stop the harm, cancel the debt, we demand reparations and justice, cancel the debt, change the system, and finally, we stand with the billions and not the billionaires. We stand with the billions and not the billionaires. Roberto, I'm sorry that I think your system is still unstable, and we've reached the time that we need to close. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity again. But thanks to all the speakers who have stimulated us, pointed out not only to the things that are left and have been uncovered, they have been left unaddressed, but we've also got some kind of way forward into the aspects that we need to pick up ourselves, because in one sense, we not only take this fight on the ground with the communities, but we also need to have a larger umbrella of multilateralism, however weak it is. So we need to really build on some of these as we go. So we need to prepare for the next phase that is going to come, and the deliberations will begin in the next maybe 12 or 14 months, and we need to be ready for it. I request now Ingo, who is the director of the Global Call to Action Against Poverty and has been anchoring this process of the Global People's Assembly event. And also, not only this, I think for the last 6 years, they have been anchoring the whole Global People's Assembly, and Global Call to Action Against Poverty has been bringing a lot of us into a coalition. Thank you very much, Ingo. Over to you for your last words.
Thank you very much, Paul. And to all the speakers. I think this was a very interesting moment in this UN General Assembly week with so many speeches of heads of states and some shocking like the one of Trump. So I think what I really like about this People's Assembly events and the real People's Assemblies are, of course, even stronger in New York, to hear from the different perspectives, the different groups, analysis, and then to see by all the differences also what unites us. And I really think we need to have a strong civil society, people's power, of course, firstly at local and national level, but we also need to see how we can act together globally. So we have heard about the Global Week of Action and economic justice campaign. So we will have more People's Assemblies events, as Nuru mentioned, to prepare for the World Social Summit, also for the COP regional. We also plan one more event at global level for the World Social Summit. So we will update you on that. At this moment, I would like to thank the speakers and Paul, also the interpreters, and also Rose and Carla to organize this, and all the organizations who are involved. So we have different, you saw the organizations from the speakers, but more organizations are involved, and I think that also is quite encouraging to see this big interest to do something together. So I thank all of you, and let's continue this fight, this resistance, this fight for justice, as we have heard. You can always contact us and me, our colleagues. There will be different moments. Thank you to everybody, and I think one good moment to be together is always the photo. I forgot. That was on my list. We have had funding for this event from the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation in New York. So thanks to them. Let's mobilize together. Let's maybe, Paul, if you can give some more of the slogans while we make the photos, that would be great. So, and thanks to all the participants for your participation.
Everyone,
thank you. This is the moment. Please open. Yeah. Great. Kindly open not only your videos but your voice. And we have this: cancel the debt, change the system, cancel the debt.
Cancel the debt.
Cancel the debt, change the system.
Stop the harm,
Cancel the debt, change the system.
Stop the harm, cancel the debt.
Stop the harm, cancel the debt.
Cancel the debt.
We demand reparations. We demand
reparations.
We demand reparations and justice.
Reparations now.
Yes. We stand with billions, not billionaires. We stand with billions.
Not the billionaires.
Not billionaires.
Not the billionaires. We stand with billions.
Stand with billions, not billionaires.
Yeah. Goodbye and thank you very much. I'm sure we will win. We want justice. When? Now.
Now.
We want justice.
Now.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Jai Bhim, Oproroma, Salve, Uhuru.
Thanks so much, Namala, for good moderation.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Kumi. Yeah.
Bye.
Great. I'm sorry.
Thank you,
Roberto.
everyone.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye.
I hope we got all the